What's going on, folks? French Fit coming back at you with another video, and I wanted to talk about training frequency. So I made a post on my Instagram not too long ago covering a couple questions you might want to ask yourself when thinking about training frequency for your teams, just in the lens of sport performance in the team setting. So I wanted to kind of go over those and go a little bit deeper into those, as well as a couple of other things that I've thought of since then. So I'm going to kind of go off my caption and then just kind of reiterate on those points. So the first thing I said you want to kind of consider is the goal of the training. So in the lens of sport performance, some common goals can be, you got your GPP accumulation phase, then you might go to more of a strength bias phase, and then to like a, power phase, if you want to call it that. Sport specific strength, tons of different names for kind of the same thing. And some of these goals are just generally going to require a little more frequency than others. Obviously, like a GPP accumulation, the more times you train per week, that's going to give you more chances, more opportunities to accumulate volume and to get more work capacity in. So kind of tough to do like a GPP accumulation phase if you're only training twice a week. Probably going to be training 4, maybe even 5 times a week. So think of this as like early off-season stuff. You're far away from your competition. You have enough stress. The skill work is really low, so you can fill up that cup with stress from the weight room more. Versus if you're in kind of a maintenance phase in season, obviously that training frequency is going to be a lot lower because the sport is taking up that much more stress. You also kind of got to examine the stressors you're going to be putting on the body. Generally, when we think about like GPP work, a little bit lower intensity, higher volume, whereas like if you're going into like a lot of people would call like a peaking phase, where you're really focused on like peaking sprint performance or like explosive strength, something like that, that taxes the nervous system a lot more, a more potent stimulus. You can't just train that stuff, 4 or 5 days a week. You're gonna need a lot of rest in between, so you might only train that 2 to 3 times a week. So the goal of the training is obviously gonna play a big role, and obviously you're gonna see generally more athletes are gonna train with higher frequencies in the off season, taper down a little bit towards the beginning of the competitive season, and then maybe a little bit more in season. You might start training 4 times a week in the off season, and then it's pretty common for a lot of teams to train, twice a week in season. Which plays into the time of the year, which is the next point. So in terms of the weeks and months that are furthest away from the competitive season, like the off season, the frequencies are going to be a lot higher because the goals are more focused on the weight room, a lot more general qualities, kind of like building that engine, so to say. And then before you get more into like the skill work, more sport specific type of things. So like I said, you have more stress to apply in the weight room further away from season because you're generally doing less sport practice. And then as you get closer to the season, those ratios kind of start to shift. You're doing a little more sport practice, and the weight room kind of takes a little bit of a back burner. So the time of the year definitely plays a huge role as well. And the needs of the sports. This is the third point that I made in that Instagram post. So simply put, the weight room is just more important for some sports than it is for others. I do think that the weight room is important for all athletes, just to be clear. But when it comes down to it, we can't deny that American football probably needs the weight room a little bit more than a cross-country runner. And that's okay. You don't need to be banging your head against the wall thinking, why isn't my cross-country team training 4 times a week? They're probably okay with 2 or 3. Whereas if you got a football team in the off season that's only hitting the weight room twice a week, probably a problem. They're probably going to get crushed. Football is just a sport where you need to be, it's more physically demanding. You got to deal with impacts, collisions. Whereas like a long distance runner, for example, it's all about how many miles can you put on, build that volume. And the strength work is more of just a supplement for like resiliency. Obviously you need resiliency in all sports, but I think you can kind of get the point that some sports, the weight room is just a lot more important. So the more contact sports, I'm thinking football, rugby, sports where like strength and just raw power is really important. So like baseball, the weight room is probably a little bit more important than like your soccer, where it's a little bit more important to be in really good condition, really good shape. The energy system development is a little bit more important in those type of sports. And then you got kind of your like hybrids, like wrestling. Like you need to be physically dominant, but also super in shape. And there's a tactical side that obviously goes very deep. But the demands of the sport are going to play a big role in the training frequency as well. And then a couple other points that I've thought of since then, or I just kind of ran out of room in the Instagram caption, but would have included if I could, are constraints. Obviously, if you're a performance coach at any level, you know that there's constraints. It doesn't matter what level it is, the constraints just get different. So it's going to look a little bit different if you're a director of football at a Power 4 school and you have your own weight room and you don't have any scheduling issues. You can schedule stuff whenever you want. The classes can be moved around the football activities. That's going to be a lot easier to schedule for, and you're probably going to get your more preferred frequency versus if you're a director at a Division III school and you have one weight room for 20 plus teams. You got everyone wanting their specific times. You know not everyone's going to get exactly what they want. You're probably not going to have the perfect scenario as far as frequency there, but that's okay. So the constraints are obviously a big thing to play a big role. And then another one is where the athlete is at in their career. So, for example, you got a guy that's a fifth-year senior, is an integral part of the team. You know, he's a starter on the team versus someone who's a redshirt freshman. They know they're not going to play. What's the difference in frequency there? Out of season, it's probably pretty similar. Obviously, you're still going to have, GPPs valuable for all athletes, I believe. But in season, you're going to want to save your guys that are going to be, your big playmakers that are going to play a lot of minutes for you, a lot of snaps, whatever you want to call it. They're probably going to train at a little less frequency and maybe a slightly lower intensity, especially if you know that this is their last year and they're a lot closer to their genetic potential, versus like someone who's a redshirt or only plays special teams. They can probably train at a little higher frequency within the season because they're not going to get as much stress on game day, and they can still kind of physically develop through the season. You don't have to wait till the off season to say, okay, now we're going to hit the weight room hard. You can be constantly developing through the season. And I think there's a way to do that with all athletes. I think if you try to maintain in season, you'll probably end up losing. I think there's always a way to try to improve, maybe just target one quality at a time. But that's a topic for an entirely different video. So yeah, hope this shed a little bit of light on some factors to consider for training frequency within the team sport setting. Obviously, there's a ton of other variables. Obviously, we know as performance coaches, we got to always be adaptable, and there's always something that you never saw coming. But I think this is kind of a good, just general overview of how you can determine training frequency in the team sport setting. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at French_fit40, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.